And I'm just like, what is happening? What is this? I've not been sick like this before. What is this? Um, and then I had no energy. I I was lost.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Fierce Fridays. My name is Elise, and today I am joined by Ms. Denie Sidney. She is the mother of Madison Grace, who has trisomy 9, a very rare form of trisomy. She is also a social worker, and she is recently a co author of a book called Lineage of Grief, which I have right here. And we will talk about later on in this episode. Thank you so much, Denie, for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me and for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, yes, yes. I'm so grateful that you're able to join me. Our friendship began in a unique way, right? Because we met online through a support group and didn't meet in person until you came to stay in my house and speak at Samar's funeral. So that's just, interesting in itself. And to
Right.
say that we have developed not just a friendship, but a sisterhood has been a blessing to me. And so I am grateful to be able to be here and to share your story with others. Before we get into Maddie and what life has been like recently, what tell us about yourself. Anything you want to share and what life was like before.
Well, we have in common that we are both social workers. I am deeply passionate about mental health and emotional well-being of people. I like being able to help people put their lives or back together again or solve problems. That is extremely emotionally fulfilling for me. Like they say with firefighters and first responders, where other people run away from disaster or big messes, and in my case, mental or emotional messes, I'm drawn to it. And even before I was drawn to it, people were drawn to me and would just come up to me and start telling me all about their problems. And I'm like, why are you telling me? This was when I was younger, and like in high school, and I didn't know it then, but that proved to be a gift or a talent I had. And I didn't plan on being a social worker. I was planning on going to medical school. I was a math and science geek. That I went to math and science summer academies. That's what I thought I was going to do. But the Lord had a detour sign. That's the way I look at it. And I became a social worker. In this country, we often identify people by what they do. For me, what I do really is who I am.
Yeah, you genuinely have a heart for people, and I've seen that shine through you from the first interaction that we have. And I know that's why we were drawn together because I feel like we're very similar, and we've talked about the fact that we're kindred spirits. And so social work is a part of who you are. It's a big part of who you are. Who else are you? Like, what was life like? What did you do? I know you were married. Um,
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
I am a daughter. I am a sister. I have three sisters, and I have been a wife. I was married 12 years before my husband passed away. He became terminally ill with a type of dementia, and I was his caregiver full time, along with caring for Madison at a point. Right now, the biggest role that I play is mother. I was a full time social worker in the corporate workforce. Prior to moving to Florida, where I am now, I lived in the Midwest. It was a very jolting thing to happen when life changed in that way for me because
Mm-hmm.
of becoming a caregiver for a sick spouse and becoming a caregiver full time for a daughter. Not that my spouse and my daughter were the reason. We live in a country that doesn't have a very thorough or wraparound support system for full time caregivers.
Mm-hmm. And so you were not just the caregiver for your daughter who has trisomy 9, but for your husband who also developed a condition. And I don't recall which happened first. Was he healthy when Maddie was born?
Yes. So the timeline goes, we were married. 3 years into the marriage, we decided to have Maddie. At the time we got ready to plan, and Maddie was born. From her birth to her third birthday, he was healthy. He got diagnosed when she was 3. There was a period of time for 6 years total with Madison that I didn't have any help with her. He ended up being sick for 6 years, but 3 of those years overlapped where I didn't have help with Madison. So I was towing the line by myself, and then lost his help with Madison due to his illness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a lot to cope with because I know, like, we've talked about the fact that, I'm married and I had Sammy there available to help me. And when you told me that your husband had passed, I'm like, well, I can't even imagine doing this journey alone because it is a lot on a person. It's a lot on two people.
A lot of people, especially at church, they didn't understand because they would say he didn't look sick. I told a lot of people he had dementia, but they're like, he doesn't look sick. And I'm like, well, what does dementia look like sick? And I think they were imagining in the end phases.
Mm-hmm.
But dementia is one of those long, there's 3 types of dementia, which a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, I do.
There's Alzheimer's type, vascular type, and Lewy body dementia. His was his part of his frontal lobe, and then a part in the back until there was so much. This affected his memory, then it affected his language. Anyway, he was with me, but he lost the ability to care for himself. He couldn't do his own medicine box anymore. He started having more car accidents. And the doctor warned me, he said, the danger with this type of dementia is he can't remember how sick he is. So he's going to get angry when you have to do more things for him. I couldn't let him help me with Maddie because he loses balance and then he might fall. The hardest times would be when I couldn't leave him at home because he wasn't safe, but I would take him out and he would have low blood sugar or something because I would tell him to eat, thinking, okay, he's going to go in the kitchen and eat, and he'd forget and sit down. But I thought he ate, and then his blood sugar would drop. I'm pushing the wheelchair and he's sliding down the side of the car to the concrete in the parking garage. And I look around, there's nobody. So I let go of the wheelchair to catch him, and Maddie's rolling out, and I'm
Oh
like,
my goodness.
forgot to put the brakes.
Oh
So
my goodness.
there was at least 3 times that happened. And thankfully, Maddie's medical team started learning that I was caring for both. I tried to remember to bring him a snack in all of Maddie's emergency bag, but it got tough.
Yeah. And that's what I'm saying, like to do it all on your own because it's hard enough taking care of a child that has, all these critical needs. But then having a grown man now that's your husband that you love and you care and watching him deteriorate, that is a whole lot. And so we've talked in the past about like, we've had other people on these episodes that have had children with, rare diagnosis like a trisomy. And we all have that similar like shock of getting the initial diagnosis and not being sure what's going to happen. So you've gotten that in different areas, right? Because you got the news for her and then you got the news for your husband, and you had to figure out how to adapt and adjust to all of it. How have you adapted and adjusted? How, like, during the stages, like how did you adapt to finding out your husband has this diagnosis after finding out that Maddie had a diagnosis?
The thing that helped me the most was being a medical social worker. That is what helped me recognize the signs with him. His doctors didn't believe me when I told them what was going on with him when I first saw. I immediately called his primary care doctor and he didn't believe me. He blew me off. So we didn't get a diagnosis right away. I had to advocate for him like I advocated for Madison for a diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And literally Madison qualified for nursing right when he started getting bad. I wouldn't let myself look up the prognosis for him because I didn't want to be counting down days.
Mm.
But he took a big turn, decline, and I decided to look to see what stage he was in. And he was much more advanced than I thought. And again, it was God's perfect timing. Maddie qualified for home health nursing, and the minute they stepped in and I got them trained, I just said, okay, I need you all to really have Maddie. I've got to take care of Dad. I was still trying to hold on to work, but we had a heart to heart, and I'm like, you know something's wrong, right? Yes. How are you managing that work? My coworkers, they're helping me. And I talked to one of them. I'm like, y'all know how bad he is. What we know he has a wife and a sick kid. So I really believe like God let me get into this take care of business mode. I didn't have time to feel. I wasn't numb, but I didn't have time to get the full emotional brunt of it,
Mm-hmm.
which ended up leading to me having an emotional breakdown. But I signed myself into the hospital. I didn't want to have a complete psychotic break where someone had to, mandatory place me somewhere because I was concerned about my career and I don't like um I didn't want to be that much out of control
Mm-hmm.
because at that time I didn't have papers for Madison for someone to make decisions and all of that. And I knew I would have to sign her into the hospital because there was no one else to take care of her. That happened before the nursing got here. I just was trying to cope. But
Mm-hmm.
you can't keep going off of 3 or 4 hours of sleep and trying to go to work. And as soon as you get to work, every time your phone buzzes, you wonder which of them is going to be the call on. So my first way of coping was accepting that I needed to quit working. It was scary, but I had to accept it. Um, and then convincing my husband he needed to retire early. So I knew I was making the right decisions for the well-being of the family, but I'm looking at that my income is going away and his
Mm-hmm.
income is going to decrease. The blessing was we were really financially wise in our savings, and that held us for a while until it ran out. Our savings carried us for 5 years.
That's significant.
So when it was gone, it was gone. I had told people how bad it was. They chose not to believe. And we ate from a food pantry for about 2 years. But I ate
Wow.
better from food pantry than my own grocery shopping because they had organic meat and vegetables and fruit. And I was like, wow, things have changed since I used to send people to a food pantry as a social worker. But we ate and we got mortgage assistance from the church. And then there was a program to defer some mortgage payments. And I didn't ask anybody for anything, but somehow God made a way that I would look up and it would be a card in the mail with a check from some friend or somebody or a gift card for the grocery store. I remember one time we got a gift card and I was trying to decide if I was going to pay for my prescriptions or buy something for food. So it was that kind of managing. Right before Marvin passed away, when I
Mm-hmm.
quit work, I didn't just quit. I couldn't go back because of sickness, physical and emotional. So
Emotional.
I ended up injuring my lower back, my right shoulder, and my left hip. So much so to the point where my back would lock and I couldn't stand up straight. And I used to have long hair. You can see now it's short, but whatever I injured with this shoulder, I could not reach above my head to comb and wash or hot curl. Eddie had been in the hospital back to back to back, like weeks at a time. We come home for a couple days, she gets sick, we go back. And I just kept my hair tied up and it got matted and dirty, and I had to get it all cut off. You couldn't get a comb through it. So once I cut it, and I said, Maddie's still here. She's still going to be in the hospital, and I can't do anything about this shoulder. I cut it off. I said, this is Maddie hospital friendly hair because this hair you can wash and wear. So that was another sacrifice, way of coping. I kept telling myself, we can't be the only parents that are going through this. I didn't find the Facebook support groups with the trisomies until Maddie was like 7 or 8. So I found some books on Amazon. And one in particular, I call it the Working Mom Survival Book. It's messages to special needs working moms or something. I've gifted that book at least 5 times. That book normalized what I was going through, and it helped me figure out some things you're going to have to let go. You're not going to be able to do everything. You won't be able to make a home cooked meal every night. You're going to have to decrease something somewhere else. It helped me learn that I was going to have to let stuff go. Like we couldn't maintain the house the way we used to. And my husband, he used to help. We divided the housework. There was not no one to divide it to.
So it was a lot to adjust to, a lot of adaptation and having to figure out how to manage your physical health, your emotional health, your finances. Like all areas of wellness were like significantly impacted by Maddie's illness and your husband's illness.
Right. And I have a heart to caution caregivers. The social worker in me let me find lots of things, equipment, grants, particularly for people who don't have Medicaid waiver or Medicaid yet. And because there's not a lot of it out there, I have caregivers that'll argue with me and say, nah, that's okay. I'm like, I can tell you the name of the grants or the foundations. It depends on your diagnosis. And they won't take anyone who already has Medicaid because Medicaid will pay for those things. They have higher income limits because they do it for families who don't meet the guidelines. Let me help you.
But it's that willingness to accept help, right? It's hard. Some people have a hard time accepting help because it's partially accepting the changes that you're experiencing. And sometimes it's hard to accept, like, okay, these things are really shifting and it's very different from what I'm used to. So if you haven't even accepted that piece, how do you now accept help? It can be challenging.
The other thing I've seen, though, is I've seen parents like me, but the social worker in me makes me fight. You've been told no so many
times. Yes.
You can't risk voluntarily signing up for something to be told no again. I literally had PTSD against like paperwork. So after, no lie, after we used all of our savings and everything, and I wasn't working, I was no longer working, and my husband was just getting his pension, which was substantially lower than him working. We met the criteria for traditional Medicaid. It took me 3 months to fill out the application. Every time I would pick it up, and I'd start crying. And the social worker from our pediatrician's office would call me. Did you do it yet? No, I'm gonna get to it. I'm trying. She's like, if you need to come to the office, we can do it together. I finally did it. It took some therapy and me attacking the negative thought patterns, get to the root cause of it. You have to be willing to go. Because I am a mental health social worker and I know the value of talk therapy if you have a good therapist. I told my therapist and my psychiatrist, I said, as long as these two are alive, and then probably after they pass, because then I will be active grieving. Right now, I'm anticipatory with some stuff, and then some stuff, because she's not going to graduate with a real diploma. So those things, you miss milestones, we grieve. But I will continue with therapy for however long I need.
Right. And it takes strength. It takes strength to say, you know what, I'm struggling right now. I'm struggling. I have a lot going on in my life and I'm about to break. It takes strength to realize that and not get to the point of breaking and say, you know what, I'd rather check myself into a hospital and get the help I need so I can be here. Right? Versus just letting things continue to unravel and then have a bigger problem on your hands later on. So to say that you did all of that and you continue to seek that assistance for yourself, sometimes people will not see that as a strength, but I know that it is because it takes a level of awareness to be able to see your circumstances and say, I need help, right? And it goes back to what you were saying too, in terms of like, even with resources and different things, sometimes we get so caught up in our circumstances, we can't really see clearly what all we need. And then someone like you, right, may come along and say, hey, I've kind of walked this path already, and there's this out here, and let me help you. It's knowing when to say, yes, please, I need help, and I appreciate it.
Right. And a lot of people tell me, well, you have medicine on your hands. Or a lot of people, when I tell them, I say, you can call me anytime, day or night. One of the first things I realized when it cut to me, it was like God tapped me on my shoulder and said, here's a plus to not being in the workforce. If someone calls you in the middle of the night and you have to go be with them, you can, because then you can sleep all day the next day, unless Maddie has a doctor's appointment. And I told that to somebody, and they were like, "Are you serious?" A family very, very close to me said, when our child is about to go, you have to help us plan the service. We can't, when if he goes at the hospital or whatever, you got to come be with us. They called me 2 o'clock in the morning. Marvin was at the nursing home at that time. I got up, I got dressed, and I went, and I helped them plan the service. Somebody said, "Oh, you should do that for a living." I said, "No,
that's a bit much."
This is for close family, friends, people the Lord has led me to."
I can testify to that because, like I said, this was our first time meeting, but you didn't just come to the funeral to like attend. You stayed in our home. You wrote her obituary. You spoke at her service, and that meant the world to me. Like it
You
meant
made me
everything.
tell the world my business.
And so what you're saying is real, like your availability, and you were able to get nursing for Maddie. And she was you drove what, 4 hours or something, 3.5 hours to come down and spend that time with me. And that just shows the level of compassion you have, as a person, to go outside of your own circumstances, that you have your own stressors and struggles, to say, you know what, I know you're going through this and I'm here to help you during this time. As you were just talking, and you've mentioned Maddie several times, Maddie's almost a teenager at this point. Is she 13 already?
No, in 4 weeks, February 4th. I still cannot believe she's been harassing me that long.
Let's talk about that, right? Because now you've talked about all the different things you've experienced, right? Having a child with a very rare diagnosis, having a husband with a diagnosis that ended up, having him lose his life, and financial difficulties, emotional struggles, all these different areas. And somehow you managed to have your child get to 12 years old. God has helped you get her to this point, and in the middle of it all, you write a you co-author a book. Where did you get the energy? How did you do it? Like, Tell me about this book experience for you.
First of all, writing a chapter in this anthology was like a rebirth. I mentioned earlier about feeling like I was on top of the world and at at the peak of my career, being the best I could be before I got married and moved here to Florida. When I quit working, I absolutely did not know who I was anymore. Never in my life was there supposed to be just mom as my identity. Now, the only people I see are Madison's doctors and therapists before the nurses even came.
Yes, that's true.
And those people handle you very differently. Forced to see them because you have to bring your daughter. They have different attitudes about you. They judge you differently. It's not a friendship, it's a professional relationship. I know another big thing I had an issue with. I was accustomed to being very prompt and being very in control. I lost my identity and I stayed lost for a very, very long time. I can't speak for everybody, but for me, there was some shame, not shame of my daughter, but shame in I was supposed to be here. I don't want anybody to know that my life didn't go as planned. I don't know what they're gonna think. And I know they can't identify with how life is for me now. 2016 comes and my body has a firestorm. I started getting illnesses, random chronic problems started popping up. I couldn't breathe. I was just inhaler, inhaler, inhaler. My nose plugged up, my sinuses, my migraines went crazy. I had body aches besides the individual injuries, the shoulder and stuff. I ended up having to go to orthopedic, a rheumatologist, an allergist, and still with the mental health. I'm just like, what is happening? What is this? I've not been sick like this before. What is this? And then I had no energy. I was lost. I'm like, wait a minute. I used to work a full-time social work job. Now I can't clean the house. Ugh, I'm so tired. What's happening? I wasn't able to exercise anymore. I couldn't eat well anymore. And then started going to all these doctors and I started getting some answers. Now I'm going from healthy, thriving, top of my game social worker to mom, to sick mom, to disabled mom. And to have to apply for disability crushed me. The last 2 physical diagnoses I got was chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia. And I had to learn about them and learn how to try to take care of my body. But when I was in the throes of it, I basically became bedridden for a while until Marvin got really bad and went into the hospital one time and never came out. So here's the supernatural part. Being that sick, I don't know how I was able to go visit him almost every day, but I did it. A lot of it was adrenaline. And then to plan his services, I swear, planning a funeral has got to be the busiest, god-awful. You don't even have to do a lot. It just still takes too much energy to do.
It's an emotional toll, it's physical, it's planning a final ceremony for a loved one.
And you want it to be meaningful. And if you don't have anybody to delegate stuff to, it's all on you. And that, ugh. So after that was all said and done, my body was like, okay, now you can grieve. all of the stuff you have not had time to. And it was like somebody stuck a nail in a tire and just let the air out. So I'd been in basically bedridden for like 3 years.
You're saying that's what's happening now?
That's what happened after Marvin passed away. He died in December 2019. And then 2 months later, COVID started buzzing. And then they shut everything down in March. So that didn't help me because I slightly became agoraphobic. There's germs out there. I don't want to get anything because then I bring it home to Maddie. I'm not bringing Maddie anywhere. And that's when Uber Eats, Instacart, and everything got popular. And because I had chronic pain, I just order everything. You know, God blessed us for things to get back to decent place financially. So I just ordered everything. I'm not going outside. I don't have a reason to. And when I would, somebody in public would act crazy, and that would support my theory of I don't need to be out.
Inside. I need to stay inside.
And then emotionally, again, between grieving, still feeling lost, because now I'm grieving my husband. He is gone. Everything is on me. And I'm tired and my body aches. Something happened at Madison School and she couldn't go back to school. So now I'm back 5 days a week helping her do online. So I couldn't go to the doctor. I was like, I give up. This is how my life's gonna be. I'm just gonna lay in the bed, do nothing. Oh well, I'm stuck. Went to the neurologist, told him everything, and he said, well, I just went to a convention and there's this new medication out that it's not made for fibromyalgia, but it might help you. He wrote me a script. I had not felt normal since before I had Maddie. I had energy for 3 weeks. And then I saw the announcement from this publishing company. Hey, do you have a story to tell? Have you experienced pain and you really want to share it with somebody so they can know there's hope? I said, wait a minute. That sounds like she's talking to me. I've been writing since I was in 6th grade. One of my majors in my bachelor's is English literature and composition. People have been telling me to write books all my life, but it always seemed like some far-fetched, too complicated thing that I didn't know how to, break into. I said, this might be my chance. And immediately, my body was like, you can't do that. You're late to everything. What if you get sick? What if Maddie gets sick? You're going to miss the deadlines. You have brain fog. How do you know you even know how to write anymore? You weren't able to do it for I was like, oh, no, I can't do it. And then something tapped me on the shoulder again. But the person who runs this publishing company has been a special needs mom before. If something comes up with Maddie, she'll understand. You should write. And then I was reminded about a couple of people, Christian speakers. Do it afraid. Do it anyway. You didn't know how to take care of a sick kid, and you and Madison are still trucking. You didn't know how to take care of a sick spouse, but you did the best you could. Do it anyway. And she's saying, if you eventually want to get to writing your own independent project, this is a way to get your feet wet. Say yes. Said, okay, God, if I say yes, I don't have enough nurses to watch Maddie. I said yes. I responded to her, asked for an interview so she could hear my pitch. And a whole bunch of nurses came and filled up the empty shifts. I was like, okay, I think I was supposed to say yes. I start writing, and then the nurses started going away. I was like, okay, what is happening? But needless to say, I kept pushing and trying, and Maddie was in the hospital, and I would write in the hospital and do projects and other stuff in the hospital. And I was always concerned that I was going to miss deadlines and be late. And she told me out of the 10 writers, I was the only one to have everything in early or on time.
Wow. Look at God. Look at God. And I'm so proud of you for pushing through. I remember when you told me about it and how you were thinking to do it. And I was like, you can do it. I know you can, and I'm so happy that you followed your intuition and you followed God's instructions and you did it. And to see this book, and I remember when you said it's out and I ordered it and started to read it, and I'm like, this is amazing. And I know there's a lot more to come. With all of that being said, and everything that you've experienced, the journey has been quite intense, but you've managed to accomplish so much and help so many people through this process. I would love to hear what you would say your biggest lesson learned has been. If you had to give advice or say what you've learned the most out of this whole journey, what would you say?
I look at this through faith-based eyes. I identify as a Christian. There's a scripture that says, we are comforted and we are to turn around, I'm paraphrasing, and comfort others with the comfort we've been given.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also scriptures that reference to that everything we go through is an experience not wasted. There's a reason. And I know people who don't believe in the same faith say, my kid wasn't made ill to teach me how to be a better person. Maybe not. But who do you listen to better? If you're a parent, a person who does not, never has kids, tries to explain to you what it's like when a kid is having a behavior issue. This is someone who has had a child and they can say, I went through this. This is what worked for me. I'm not saying that the person who's never had a child can't tell you anything, but I'm more comfortable with the person who's experienced it. There's something about going through their nuances and little tidbits and tips that you get that a person who's not gone through the experience doesn't get. So when I'm talking to parents who have babies with rare disorders or developmental delays, particularly on the medical side, because that's where I identify with Madison, I know the best words to speak to your pain. I can speak to a whole lot of people because I've been through a whole lot of suffering. Biggest lesson I've learned is that sometimes the stuff I'm going through is not just for me. It may be for someone else I'm going to meet that does not know, does not have a support system, which I really don't, does not know how to reach out, does not know how to speak with a doctor or a hospital or a nurse, does not know where to find resources to help them with whatever. A lot of people are shocked to know that there are big kids or adult diaper banks. If you can't get diapers, if you don't have the Medicaid and you private paying for them like I did, I know some places where you can get them. That's one huge one. I would say that's the first one. And the second one is never underestimate the human mind and the strength of your heart.
Mm.
I doubt myself a lot. Doubted myself more because of fear, because of things being new. What I've come to know is for me, I have to give myself some space to work through that fear and anxiety and then adjust things so I can get through them. I'll never tell somebody, oh, don't be afraid. You should be confident in yourself. What has gotten better is I now know with some assurance that when somebody tells me it won't be like this always, it really won't be like this always. But when you're at the beginning of a 5-year thing, 5 years looks like forever.
Mm-hmm.
you
Yep.
know. So so yes, I will get nervous. I will get anxious. And some people say, "Oh, don't speak that." Look, I tried the speaking it not. The inside of my body still gets nervous. I give a little space to it. I make sure I take my medicine, but I have to remind myself that I will get through it. I can do it. I can make it. Whereas before, the anxiety just stopped me dead in my tracks. So
Mhm.
my biggest thing with Madison is to give space for what she's dealing with. I'm not going to stop her from having a fit when we need to get her dressed. I can't make myself move faster because of my low energy or my achy bones, but can get up earlier. I can try to do some stuff at night. And if I am late, I don't have to mentally bash myself for it. We leave when we leave. If we get there and they say, we'll take you, fine. If they say we can't, I reschedule and I walk out. I used to have a mental breakdown right there in the doctor's office. Like, I can't do no better. I'm trying. I'm giving it all I got. And this is what happened. So those are my two things. Everything you go through is not for yourself. Um, there is a reason, whether it's for somebody else or you might find out the reason, you might not, but there's a reason. And no, I don't feel like God is punishing anyone. um Maddie's full of miracles. There's no
Yes,
punishment.
yes, she is. And I'm blessed that I had the opportunity to meet her. Our family got to drive up and visit you one time, and that was a blessed visit. And so I were able to have this conversation and that you were able to share your heart with me and with others, and that you book and that you continue pushing through the different struggles that still come up here and there, because that is life, right? But that's what resilience is pushing through despite the challenges that life presents. So thank you so much, Denie. I love you, and I'm so grateful to have had this moment, and I'm sure many more to come with you.
Yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
thankful for the James family, my extended family as well. So to get those further details about what happened after the phone call, Lineage of Grief, I
Oh,
am author number one, and I am currently working on the second collaborative as we speak.
yes.
It's slated to come out in the spring. So the first book, Lineage of Grief, my chapter in there is the prequel to my memoir. So stay tuned, good things to come. And if you want to get in touch with me, definitely get in touch with Miss James, Elise James, and she will connect you.
Yes,
I'm
and
proud of you as well. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all today, and I hope somebody learned something.
I hope they will too. Thank you so much. Blessings to you all.
All right.